Imagine this. A teenage boy on the Crow Indian Reservation in Montana dies after a police chase. And then, just days later, the entire police force just vanishes. This is a really tough story. It's about a family's desperate search for answers, but it's also about a system that's been failing them, and so many others, for a very, very long time. So at the very heart of this whole thing is Blossom Old Bull and her 17-year-old son, Braven Glenn. This spot, right here by these railroad tracks, this is where her son's life was cut short. And what began as an unthinkable family tragedy, well, it quickly spiraled into a much bigger, much more confusing mystery. This line from the report it hits you right in the gut. After a cop chased a Crow boy to his death, the force vanished, leaving the tribe without answers. Again. A death, a police force that just disappears, and for a Native family, this all too familiar, painful silence. So to really get how this all happened, we have to go back to the beginning. All right, so let's rewind. Let's go back to the night of the crash and walk through the chain of events that led to Braven's death. You know, the crazy thing is, it all started with something so normal. Just incredibly ordinary. Braven Glenn was driving to pick up his girlfriend, and he legally passed a slower car on a 2-lane highway. A totally normal move. But what he couldn't have known was that the driver of that car was a brand new officer from the Crow Nation's newly formed police department. And what happened next? It escalated so fast, it's honestly hard to believe. The officer flips on her siren, a chase starts, and just 70 seconds later, it's all over. Braven's car is hit by a train, and he was killed instantly. And then, the story gets even weirder. Just days after the crash, the entire police force, and get this, they were operating out of an old Subway sandwich shop. They just disappeared. Vanished. When Braven's mom, Blossom, went to their headquarters looking for any kind of answer, all she found was a locked door. So you have to ask, right? Why did this makeshift police force even exist in the first place? And the answer, well, it goes way back. It's rooted in a long, troubling history of federal neglect on the reservation. Just look at this number, 4, that's it. For a period of time in 2020, that was the total number of federal police officers on the entire Crow Reservation. And those 4 officers, they were supposed to patrol 3,500 square miles. To give you some perspective, that's an area about 2/3 the size of Connecticut. It was an impossible job, and it left the whole community feeling dangerously exposed. And you can see the disparity here pretty clearly. On average, reservations have about 1.9 officers for every 1,000 people. The national average is almost double that, at 3.5. So this isn't just a problem on the Crow Reservation, not at all. It's a systemic crisis across all of Indian country. This quote from Bertie Realbird, a resident there, really captures that feeling of vulnerability. She said, "When you start thinking about it, you're a sitting duck." I mean, with police response times sometimes taking hours, if they even came at all, people felt completely on their own. And this vacuum of law enforcement, it had absolutely devastating consequences. It directly fueled the ongoing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous people. So you can understand why the Crow Nation was so desperate. They felt like they had no choice but to take matters into their own hands. And that desperation is what led the tribe's chairman to use COVID relief funds to start his own police force. I mean, it was a bold attempt to fill this huge, dangerous void. But it was a solution that was born out of crisis, and honestly, it was deeply flawed right from the very beginning. And maybe nothing shows just how makeshift this whole operation was better than its headquarters. It was a closed-down Subway restaurant. Think about that. The counter where they used to keep cold cuts and veggies, that became a shelf for the officers' guns. Even the department's first police chief, Terrell Bracken, basically admitted what was going on. He said they were building an airplane as we were flying. It was just a chaotic, completely unprepared operation, trying its best to act like a professional law enforcement agency. And the red flags, man, they were everywhere, and they were staggering. The whole force had questionable legal standing to begin with. The dispatchers, no training. They had uncertified officers out on patrol for months. And here's the kicker. The officer who chased Braven had absolutely no training in high-speed pursuits. In fact, her main job at a VA hospital specifically banned them. She was just completely unprepared for the very situation that led to his death. So after the crash and after the police force just evaporates, The story really comes back down to one person, a mother. A mother just trying to find out how and why her son died. But what Blossom Old Bull ran into was an impossible wall of silence, a total runaround. She'd ask, "Where's the official report?" The answer, it went missing after a break-in. Okay, where is the officer's patrol car, a key piece of evidence? Oh, the officer just drove it home. So who is investigating? The Bureau of Indian Affairs would point to the FBI. The FBI said they had no file. Just nothing. And according to Ray Peppers, a former state lawmaker from the Crow tribe, this whole experience, it isn't some rare thing. It's the norm. It's just expected for Native families not to get information. This wall of silence is, sadly, what so many have come to expect when tragedy strikes. But then, years later, an investigative reporter finally got access to the Bureau of Indian Affairs files on the crash. And what those files revealed? Well, it painted a very different picture from the one Braven's family had been told. So, the officer's own dashcam footage laid out this just damning timeline. At 5:39 p.m., Braven makes a completely legal pass and slows back down to the speed limit. The officer then initiates a stop for speeding, even though she herself was only going 55 miles per hour. And from that exact moment, the pursuit just explodes. In less than a minute, the speeds hit 109 miles per hour. And the chaos didn't stop once the crash happened. The investigation found the paramedics were called to the scene, then they were mysteriously canceled, only to be called back again. The patrol car, a crucial piece of evidence, was removed. Records just vanished. From the very beginning, key evidence was mishandled, making it almost impossible to get a true account of what actually happened. Finally, a policing expert reviewed the entire case, and her conclusion is just heartbreakingly clear. She said, had she terminated the pursuit, more likely than not, Braven Glenn would not have been involved in a vehicular fatality accident. The choice to chase Braven over a minor traffic issue, a choice made by an untrained officer, is what directly led to his death. It was completely preventable. So yes, this is a story about the tragic death of one boy, Braven Glenn, but it's also so much bigger than that. It's about a broken system, a police force that was literally built on a foundation of decades of federal neglect. And that leaves all of us with a really final and really difficult question. When a system like this is built to fail, who is truly held accountable when it does?